The current crisis in Ukraine started over a year and a half ago with peaceful protests in the capital and quickly escalated into a near civil war in the eastern half of the country between separatist rebels backed by Russia and the Western-backed Ukrainian government. But how did Ukraine get to this point? The best way to understand the current situation is to look at Ukraine's geographic position between Russia and Western Europe. Historically part of the Russian Empire, Ukraine achieved its independence 25 years ago, but is still living at the political and economic fault line between NATO and EU-leaning former Soviet satellite states and republics and Russia. This delicate balance reached a tipping point as Ukraine formally became part of the EU's Eastern Partnership and seemed to be wanting to tie itself closer to Western Europe economically and politically. When the Ukrainian government backtracked on the deal, peaceful protests sprung up in Kiev which exposed deep divisions in Ukrainian society. Clear between those who wanted closer ties with the West and those who wanted to remain closer to Russia. The 2010 presidential election seemed to show Ukraine linguistic, cultural, and ethnic divisions that soon became the focal point for violence, which quickly overshadowed the essential economic problem. The protests sparked a series of military takeovers in Crimea and a subsequent referendum and annexation of that province by Russia. The economic issues centered on Ukraine's position along the main gas pipeline between the resource-rich Russian state and the resource-dependent Western Europe. This again was overshadowed by new separatist movements in the eastern half of the country centered around Donetsk. The separatist movements aimed at further splintering the Ukrainian state. Western media largely blames Russian President Vladimir Putin for being behind these rebel groups in a bid to regain lost Soviet territory and strengthen his nationalist image, going as far as to equate him with Hitler. Whereas the Russians equally blame the West for attempting to pull Ukraine out of its sphere of influence and charge Ukrainian nationalists with being enthralled to modern-day Nazi groups that clearly have ties to a dark past. As over 1 million refugees flee the fighting in the eastern part of the country, a fragile ceasefire attempts to allow all parties to seek a diplomatic solution.